Your fantasy football season is over. So what is there to do? Time to play DFS. We have the DFS Showdown slates covering all of the NFL wildcard games. This video is going to focus on the Denver Broncos versus the Buffalo Bills. So stay tuned. Oh, Captain, my Captain, this is Club Fantasy's DFS Showdown slate video. We are here to talk about all of the NFL wildcard weekend games. This video, we're going to be breaking down the Denver Broncos versus the Buffalo Bills. I'm your host, Joshua Hudson. You can find me at the One Hudsonian. He, of course, our DFS expert here at Club Fantasy, Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL. Austin, it's NFL football, baby. Let's rock and roll. It's the best time to play DFS, man.
Yeah, it is. And I'm actually really intrigued by this matchup for fantasy football, DFS, best ball, all the formats that you could be playing right now.
Absolutely. All right. Friendly reminder, Austin, tell everybody how they can play these DFS Showdown slates against us here at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, there's a link in the show description, whether you're on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice, where you can join a league on DraftKings, where we host $2 contests. We will host a contest for every single one of these playoff games during wildcard weekend. We also have a couple of games for the Saturday games, for the Sunday games. So you have lots of different options to pick from this week to play DFS with us and see if you can come take our money.
Absolutely. And of course, be sure to check out our sister site, Women of Fantasy Football, and their partnership with Trophy Smack. Head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. And get all of your achievement-based needs. You won yourself a fantasy football championship, and now you're using that money to play some DFS tournaments. Save a little bit and get yourself some achievement-based swag. Go get that championship belt, trophy, ring, wall smack to decorate your offices. All that stuff you can get at trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. And of course, all of this is in support of women in sports. We're lucky enough to be able to send 4 different women to the Super Bowl this year to cover the big game. We'd like to be able to give them more than just the passes. So anytime you use that direct link, any and all commissions go towards the support of those wonderful ladies going to the big game. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. And from now until January 31st, if you add a ring to your cart with the purchase of a trophy or a belt, get that bling for free. Use promo code WOFF, WOFF at checkout. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All right, Austin, first category here, Captain Chalk. These are the chalky captains that everybody is likely to pick because they're the well-known choices and they're that damn good. He's the MVP front runner. Maybe he shouldn't be, but he is, and that's okay. But let's talk a little bit about Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen, he's going to be the highest rostered captain on the slate. We just got done recording the episode with Baltimore in it. It's a very similar scenario. Lamar is going to be the most rostered player in that game. Josh Allen's going to be the most rostered player in this game. This is a situation where I do think it is worth playing into the chalk, although I don't feel as passionate about it as I do with Lamar, where you need to play Lamar no matter what. I do, though, want to point out with Josh Allen, he soaks up almost all of the production for... Sorry, my cat is scratching at the window right now, so hopefully you cannot hear that. Josh Allen, he will soak up most of the production. He doesn't have like a particular receiver that he tends to target either. He tends to spread the ball out. James Cook gets involved. So it's not like there's one receiver who is likely to get 10 catches, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like there's one that could do that, but it's unlikely that it will happen. And so Josh Allen will probably be the source of the most fantasy points in this game and therefore end up being the optimal captain, especially in smaller field stuff. You should play him in the captain spot, at least some in your lineup. There are some other options that I think are interesting, but Josh Allen, like, there's a great chance he just ends up being the best, the highest scoring player on this slate.
Well, in the event that you get bored playing Josh Allen and want some alternatives, let's go to the next category, and that's the Mutineer. These are going to be your contrarian captain choices that offer some variety and upside in larger tournaments. Let's stay on the Buffalo Bills side. James Cook tied for the league lead in rushing touchdowns with 16, all while Josh Allen still scores a bunch of rushing touchdowns. Does James Cook have a few more rushing touchdowns in his bag this week?
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that, typically I would not even have considered James Cook in this spot because he never scored rushing touchdowns last year. It was always Josh Allen. Well, this year it has changed, and there have even been games where they both do pretty well. So I'm comfortable putting James Cook in this spot. Now, the spread in this game would suggest that Buffalo, they probably should dominate according to the sports books. They're 8.5-point favorites. I personally think Denver covers, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But if you're betting into this narrative from the sports books that Buffalo is just going to cook and kill it in this matchup, then James Cook probably has a really good day. He probably runs a lot. He probably scores a couple of touchdowns. People are going to want to talk about weather this weekend. Last time I checked the forecast for Buffalo, it's the nicest day of the week, is what the Weather Channel app said.
That could also still be a very ugly weather day.
It could be.
Real here.
It will be cold, but it will be sunny. So there's that. That's nice. Unless, it changes and then there's a snowstorm. Who knows? But James Cook, interesting guy to pick, especially if Buffalo is going to dominate. If you agree with me that Denver covers this matchup, picking one of the receivers is going to be the best option, and people will flock to Cortland Sutton first. I think that's totally acceptable. But I think if you're in a large field, even smaller field stuff, Marvin Mims is a very intriguing alternative captain to me. He's gotten increased volume, increased utilization. They've kind of figured out his role in this offense, and he has super high upside because he has that downfield threat. He scores touchdowns. Like, he's got everything that you want in a high upside DFS pick. The thing that I really want to point out about this is that among the 12 teams that are playing this weekend in the wild card, Buffalo has given up the most points to the wide receiver position since week 14. Some of that is because that they play from ahead, and so other teams have to pass. But let's also consider they played the New England Patriots twice during that span, and yet they still have given up the most points among playoff teams to the receiver position. So I think they're not good against receivers. I love betting on the Denver Broncos receivers in this matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, over the last 4 weeks, Marvin Mims is a top 15 wide receiver in PPR scoring. Can definitely work out in his favor here. I like that Marvin Mims pick. He's somebody that I believe actually finished second in the NFL third in the NFL in yards per route run. So he's really started to come on in his second year in the league, finding some chemistry there with Bo Nix. I love that option as a contrarian captain. Next category here is the first mate, because every captain needs a reliable crew. These are going to be the standouts that help maximize your lineup. Just got done talking about one Denver Broncos wide receiver. How about old reliable Mr. Cortland Sutton from SMU,
yes.
baby?
Yes, Cortland Sutton. He's been the volume hog in this Denver Broncos receiving core, so it's hard to not bet on him at least a little bit in this matchup, and that's really what makes this first make slot for both of my receiver picks. They're both the receivers that are likely to get the most catches for either team. Cortland Sutton on the Denver Broncos side, and Khalil Shakir on the Buffalo Bills side. Now, the interesting thing about both of them is neither of them might score a touchdown, right? Like, both of these offenses have other options that can get them touchdowns scored pretty easily. Both quarterbacks can score rushing touchdowns. And so, yes, having Sutton and Shakir in your captain spot here and there is helpful, but I like getting off of that a little bit and having them in my lineup, but relying on my captain spot elsewhere. Especially the reason I didn't put Sutton in the captain spot for Denver is because when you look at long-term trends for DFS single game showdown slates, you'll find that the correlation, and just in fantasy football in general, the correlation between the quarterback and their wide receiver 1 is very similar to the correlation between the quarterback and their wide receiver 2. Like, it's often that if the quarterback is doing well, both of his number 1 receivers are also doing well. And so people will often flock to just the wide receiver 1 because, oh, that's the wide receiver 1. They're going to be the dominant one, right? Well, the wide receiver 2 allows you more contrarian options and upside. So yes, have Sutton in some captain spots and smaller contests. But I think also like that's kind of the thinking behind going after Mims. And it's also why I kind of will actually avoid Shakir in my DFS lineups, because I don't think he truly has the upside to get there. And I think that there are other options on Buffalo that are more interesting for that captain spot.
Yeah, while Shakir has kind of been the most consistent wide receiver option for the Buffalo Bills, hasn't really felt like there's a lot of pop weeks that come along with that, right? And I think that kind of, when you're putting somebody like that in a captain slot, you're almost dooming your team from the start, because you need that pop potential, right? Like you need that, those 30, 40 point potential outings. Shakir doesn't offer that the same way some of these other players do. So it's a really good point to touch on. All right, next topic here is the deck scrubbers. These are going to be the cheaper punt plays that can make or break a lineup based on one play or limited opportunity. Let's stay on the Bill side. Mac Hollins has been kind of a thorn, I guess, in Khalil Shakir's side. We'll just call it that, right? He's catching those touchdowns and creating the pop weeks when Shakir's out here doing all the dirty work.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the things that I love about Matt Collins. Khalil Shakir, like, I think they kind of use him as a first down receiver.
Chain mover,
like, yeah, move the chains, get down the field. And then Matt Collins is the guy that scores the touchdowns. Like, he gets rewarded for all of the blocking he does too, though, because he's a pretty stout receiver, pretty skilled at run blocking. So I think, they want to reward him a little bit with some touchdowns, and I think it's well worth it. And Hollins, he has that upside just because he gets used in these kind of gadgety ways. He could have like a 2-catch, 2-touchdown game, which if he does that, like, it's not going to be enough to be a captain, but it's going to be enough to be likely in the optimal lineup. So I definitely think he's a great target. He's somebody that can do it really on short opportunities. And one of the common themes across really all of these slates is the good players are incredibly expensive. DraftKings has really priced them up. And so you got to sacrifice if you're going to really play those expensive players. And Matt Collins is one of these guys that just gives so much upside at a salary if you're going to sacrifice on that front. I also like Adam Troutman on the Denver Broncos side. Bo Nix, he does throw to the tight end. Sean Payton likes designing stuff for the tight end. Troutman is the number 1 tight end for the Broncos right now. He's not getting a ton of volume, but he can get that touchdown upside.
Yeah, they've been using him quite a bit. Bo Nix has done a really good job of spreading the football around, getting really a lot of different pieces in this offense. I mean, who the hell heard of Devon Vele before this season, right? Like, 27-year-old rookie coming in. Troutman, they definitely haven't used the tight end position. Sean Payton hasn't in Denver the way that he did once with Jimmy Graham in New Orleans. But, maybe that'll change. Maybe they draft a good tight end in 2025, and we no longer have to talk about Adam Troutman. One more time, you can play these DFS Showdown slates against us over on DraftKings. Hit the link in the description over on YouTube or wherever you are listening to your favorite podcast. Play with a bunch of great people and maybe take our money. Maybe we'll take it. Who knows? But that is why we play. All right, final segment here is the Kraken. These are the lineup traps that sink the ship. I want to talk about Curtis Samuel here because he did have a fairly decent week 18. But of course, that was with second and third string quarterbacks. Josh Allen has largely ignored Curtis Samuel this year, which is a little surprising because I didn't think that would be the case heading into 2024.
I didn't either. I was very intrigued when they signed him in the offseason, and the season started off decent for him. He had a pretty consistent role, even if it wasn't super high volume. But then to your point, it's fallen off in recent weeks, except for week 18 when there was the backups on tap. So I'm really just avoiding him, and I brought this up because people might lean into and they might just look at week 18 and say, oh, look, he did get utilized. Tell me what's happening there. He got involved. Well, It's because they were running the backup. So I would just avoid him this week.
Yeah, and your next point here, as you've mentioned a little bit throughout this video, is that you think that Denver covers. So what's the big mistake here that you want people to leave with as we end this video?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to only play this matchup as if Buffalo covers. I think it's going to be really tempting to do a Buffalo onslaught lineup, do a lot of like 4 Buffalo players with 2 Denver bringbacks, maybe even 5 Buffalo players and a single Denver player on the bringback. As I mentioned earlier, the Buffalo's secondary is not good against opposing receivers. And in fact, I could see a scenario where multiple Denver Broncos players score well from a fantasy perspective, and Josh Allen scores well from a fantasy perspective, and Buffalo wins, but most of the Buffalo Bill players didn't score enough points. And so it was actually the Broncos players that you needed in order to have an optimal lineup. I also honestly, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Denver pulls out the victory here. Like, they're the kind of team that feels hot, and it feels like they could take down a team like the Buffalo Bills. People might think like, oh, well, you're going to Buffalo. Like, I kind of don't care about that because Denver, they have one of the biggest disadvantages in football by playing in Denver. Playing at elevation is a disadvantage no matter what sport you're playing. And then they're now going to go to, okay, 30-degree weather in Buffalo. Well, guess what? It gets cold in Denver too. So like there's a lot that I'm not worried about with Denver traveling to Buffalo for this. And I think they have the type of upside that they could make this a contest, and it could be that the Denver side really carries the weight from a fantasy perspective in this matchup.
All right. One more time, head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. You can hit the link directly in the description here. Help us to continue to support women in sports from now until January 31st. Enter code WOFF. That's WOFF at checkout. Get yourself a free ring with the purchase of a championship belt or trophy. He is Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL. I am Joshua Hudson at the One Hudsonian. You, of course, can follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. We will be covering every single NFL playoff game and dissect these DFS showdown slates here on Oh Captain, My Captain. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube page and get notified when these new videos drop. We've dissected the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills here today. We've got more videos dropping, so make sure you're tuned in and locked in on the Club Fantasy FFL channel. Until next video.